Hey y'all, Brent here with another anime primer video. This is about what I call the golden age of anime from 1988 to 1998, basically the 90s. This was a period right after Akira came out, and that was so popular, in other words, it made so much money, that the financiers behind anime realized that, hey, if we put money into anime, we'll make money, potentially a lot of money. So they started throwing money in anime, and it was just really easy to get anime made these days, especially now that the OVA market, the original video animation, essentially direct-to-video anime series, that had solidified as a solid way of making money with anime. All of a sudden, you didn't need a deal with movie theaters, you didn't need a deal with the TV station. You could make the anime, dump it right onto the market, and make money. So the 90s just boomed with anime. And I mean, the American anime market is still mining the 90s for shows that still haven't come out over here. It's that big. So a good example of the anime boom was Neon Genesis Evangelion, or Evangelion, depending on how you pronounce it, made by Gainax, big anime studio, certainly at that time. They really hadn't had a big commercial hit up to that point. They made a great film called Wings of Honey Mise, TV show called Nadia of the Blue Water, I think. Anyway, none of them had really made much money. Evangelion just wouldn't stop making money. Critically acclaimed, fans loved it, and I mean, apocalyptic mecha, lots of blood, psychotic characters, sexuality. I mean, yeah, and also remarkable for the fact that there's this sort of sex scene in the show. It's off camera. You don't actually see it happening, but you know what's going on. And there were a lot of complaints when that aired, and it caused the Japanese censors to sort of sit up and take notice. And there was some sort of media attention, which helped the anime industry to sort of get into the public consciousness that yes, we are now tackling more serious things, and we're trying, stuff that isn't just kids' fare. Of course, Evangelion also had arguably the most controversial ending in anime history, but that's another video. This is also the golden age of the harem anime, as started by Tenchi Muyo and Ranma 1/2. Ranma's more of an ensemble show, lots of male and female characters. Tenchi really introduced the idea of the slightly nerdy main guy surrounded by beautiful girls who all are interested in him. It also introduced the bathhouse episode. Yes, it invented that. I should also mention Rurouni Kenshin, which, a couple of things. For one, it was a very influential manga. It kind of perfected the shonen formula of the 90s and so on. And also, a bunch of the assistants on Kenshin would go on to become major mangaka in their own right. The guy who does One Piece, the guy who does Shaman King, they all got their start on Kenshin. Also, the anime ran long enough, 150 episodes, that it established that the shonen series could actually tell a long-form, dramatic, character-driven story without reverting to sort of tournament storylines or completely irrelevant side trips and so forth. Kenshin has its issues, the anime, but point is, it showed that you could actually do a show that actually comes together as a big shonen story. Also in the late 90s, there was a show called Pokemon. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Of course, it exploded onto the international scene. I mean, arguably the reason anime is as big as it is over here in America now is because Pokemon turned anime into a household word. And it's kind of a shame. I mean, Pokemon is a fine kid show. I have nothing against it. But it's really unlike most anime series, at least as most anime fans define anime. There's no story arc overall. There's very little depth to any of the characters. And there's little of the beautifully animated sequences that we all love from like Kenshin or Evangelion or a lot of other shows. Even shows like Naruto and Bleach have some really nice animation that Pokemon just doesn't have. But Pokemon is what a lot of non-otaku or non-anime fans think of when they think of anime, which is just kind of ironic. Kind of similar to Dragon Ball Z in a sense. That Dragon Ball Z, again, isn't like a lot of anime, but it's what a lot of folks think anime is. Oh well. This was also the golden age for the most popular worldwide anime director, Hayao Miyazaki. And he got his start actually the same year as Akira. He came out with a movie called My Neighbor Totoro. Lovely family film. And that established his reputation for these sort of gentle, family-friendly films that nevertheless dealt with some serious issues. You know, family responsibility, adult responsibility, how revenge is bad, stuff like that. And he did Kiki's Delivery Service and Princess Mononoke and Porco Rosso and all sorts of other great, great movies during this time. He'd done a lot of stuff beforehand. I mean, Miyazaki was working in anime throughout the 80s. But the 90s was really his golden age. A few other anime, and one of the things about the 90s is because so much came out, there's no way I could possibly list all the major anime of that time. It's one of the cool things about it. So I'm just going to mention some of a few major names. This is not in any particular order or whatever. Martian Succession of Desico, very popular in Japan. It was a mecha parody. It's also a very good mecha show. Good thing. Ghost in the Shell, the original movie, serious dramatic sci-fi action movie, and very popular on the art house circuit in America especially and the rest of the world. A lot of worldwide film critics really got into anime when they saw Ghost in the Shell. It's one of those arty film, cool. Ninja Scroll, of course, lots of violence and nudity, so lots of folks liked it, especially teenagers. Also, again, popular outside of Japan. And during the 90s, anime was starting to really get its grip on countries outside of Japan. Anime fandom in America started to really coalesce at this time. There had been the fan clubs and such in the 80s, which had started to really coalesce something. But in the 90s, we started getting actual numerous companies in America importing anime and dubbing anime and subtitling and things like that. So there was really starting to get a real organized fandom that could support a small industry, which was important. In fact, they started making anime off of for the American fandom at this point. But all good things must come to an end, and the Japanese economic bubble burst in the early 90s, and it took a few years for that to catch up to anime, but budgets dried up, and we started getting really cheap anime. Anime went from standard 50 episodes in the 80s for an anime TV show to 26 episodes, down to 13 episodes in the late 90s as sort of the standard. And two shows from 1998 to me really exemplify the transition point at that point. Because the question was, what is the anime industry going to do now? How are they going to react to these lower budgets? And the first show that I think really exemplified this was Cowboy Bebop, which I'm sure you all know of. And why? Because that was actually had a budget, and it showed that, yes, anime was still being made with a pretty good budget, pretty high budget. It was pretty experimental, definitely not your typical anime series in terms of being influenced by American film and things like that. Very sophisticated visual style, much more serious than a lot of anime up to that point. It certainly wasn't aimed at little kids, aimed at a more adult audience. And it managed to be very visually effective. The other show of the period was Serial Experiments Lain. And this is my favorite anime of all time, but that's not why I'm putting it on here. Lain was very cheap, but again, highly experimental, very sophisticated visual style, aimed at adults, or certainly older teens and adults. And despite that limited budget, very visually effective and influential. I mean, the president of Production IG recently talked about his respect for Lain. It had quite an impact. So that was how anime was responding. Even with a low budget, anime could be interesting and could be remarkable and be effective. And that really marked the transition to the modern era, about which I will do another video soon.